Hey guys, this is Joanna from Custom Quilts, and today I'm going to be showing you a little trick that I do to sometimes bind mini quilts. I don't usually do this for large quilts unless I'm just making it for myself, because squaring up is not as accurate as it would be if you were squaring it up the right way and all that stuff. So you just need a length of binding like you would typically do for whatever size quilt you have. This is a pretty small mini. I think it's the length that I cut was like 80 inches, which is a little bit too much, but that's fine. And so what you're going to do when starting out is, my binding, I cut it 2.5 inches wide by the width of fabric, and then I join the pieces together. And so whenever you start out, you're gonna unfold you're gonna press wrong sides together with your binding, so you have a raw edge and a folded edge over here. So I'm going to open up my piece of binding, and I'm going to, I already did this, but you're going to take scissors or a rotary cutter and make a 90-degree cut this way so that you have a point over here on the right side. And you're going to leave this open. And little disclaimer, there are tons of ways to sew binding on. This is just the way that I do it. I'm not saying that this is the right way, but do whatever works for you. So now I'm going to come and I'm going to fold this down about 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to move my long arm needle over here so that I'm ready to sew down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start sewing. I'm going to secure this folded edge down, and I'm going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'm going to sew for about 3 inches. So if you need kind of a visual, I'm going to stop probably right about here. And I'll tell you, you'll see why we're doing this in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, and so since my binding is 2.5 inches wide, I know that whenever I have this little fold over here, it's going to be 1.25 inches. That's what this distance is, because it's folded. So that's where this crease is going to fall. And so I know that I need to place my ruler so that I see 3 little lines touching this fold to give me a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I also know that the distance from the needle to the edge of my foot is a 1/4 inch. So if I just keep this foot on the edge of my fabric, that'll be pretty close to a 1/4 inch. And this is not a crucial piece again, so I'm not really worried about being super consistent. Okay, now once you get to your stopping point, you're gonna just sew off the edge. Okay, and so now I've got the binding secured, the edge of it, and now I'm going to refold it over and make sure that you have this 3/8 inch piece still folded whenever you fold. You can definitely pin the first few times just so that you know everything's staying where it needs to. Just make sure you're removing the pins and not sewing over them with your long arm, because it can knock your timing out, you can break needles, it can do really bad things. And now I'm going to go back and I'm going to start where I stopped sewing, which I can faintly see my blue line, so that's going to be right here. So I'm leaving about 1.5 inches unsewn of this piece that I folded back over. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew until I get to the edge of my fabric down here, and I'm going to sew diagonally off the edge where the fabric ends. So I'm going to take my ruler, and I can see that I have 3 lines on the folded edge. That's how I'm measuring my 1/4 inch. Okay, so I just sewed a little diagonal line right here, and now I'm going to kind of fold my fabric over so that I have a nice mitered corner. And I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to sew up this diagonal. Only 1/4 inch. Okay, and so now I'm just going to keep sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance across the horizontal of this. And I'm making sure that my binding raw edge is lined up with the raw edge of this mini quilt where I'm wanting to square it up. And it'll definitely be more accurate for you if you make guidelines, like if you need to mark exactly where you're going to square up your quilts, that would definitely be helpful. But this is just a quick and dirty job for me, so I'm just doing this real quick and eyeballing it. So I came over here and I sewed up the diagonal again. Excuse me. And then I like to put the rest of my binding towards the middle of the quilt so that I know I'm not sewing over it accidentally. And you're going to miter your corner again, just like you did previously on the other side. So I'm going to come over here. Okay, and I'm going to stop when I get about a 1/4 inch in. And then you're just going to follow your 1/4 inch seam allowance again, sewing up the vertical. And then sew off diagonally again, just like you did previously. Miter your corner once more. Okay, and then I'm just going to lay this out up top. Come back and do my 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, and then this is going to be our last corner that we need to fold over to miter. We're almost there. Come back and sew up your diagonal again, about a 1/4 inch. Okay, and so you're going to go ahead and sew back down a 1/4 inch, but you're going to stop before you get to this little piece that you started, right? And so what you're going to do is you want to come and cut this piece off, again at a 90-degree angle. You're going to leave it closed though, so you're not going to open it up like you did previously. And so you want your diagonal cut to begin before you get to this mark. So hold your binding kind of taut so that you can eyeball where you need to make the cut. And the point can go past this line. So it can be kind of like this. So I'm going to go ahead. Do you see how it's starting up here above this line where you started sewing? And then it's ending a little bit below. So I'm going to go ahead. These scissors are not great for cutting this, but that's what I have with me. So we're going to trim that excess away. And what we're going to do is we're going to tuck this piece into this opening that we had. And it can be a little bit easier if you sew more than 3 inches, but this is kind of what I'm used to doing, so that's how much I'm going to sew. And just tuck that point down into the little sleeve that you made. And make sure that you've still got 3/8 of an inch folded over on the beginning of your binding. And it's a good idea to pin this maybe over here so you know you're not going to sew through the pins but I'm just gonna go ahead and do it because I've done this several times and I know it's gonna stay put. Now, this can get a little bit hairy if you don't have it pinned because your foot can catch this and flip it back, and you don't want that to happen. So just make sure if you're holding it down with your fingers that your fingers are out of the way of the path of the needle so you don't sew through your finger. I like to just sew a couple stitches real slowly just to secure that down, and then boom. Sew a couple times over the line where you started, and you're done. So we now have the binding finished, sewn to one side on this mini, and now I can take it off the long arm, square it up, and then flip the folded edge to the other side and finish either by hand or by machine, whichever you prefer. So I hope you can save some time using this little shortcut that I showed you, and have a great day.